Hi, this is Rachel. I am going to go ahead and give you a recorded lecture about the first grade content based on the Georgia Standards of Excellence. So from the Georgia Standards document, this is a summary of what first graders are going to be doing. They're going to be looking at magnets, shadows, sound, doesn't say light, but also light, weather, and the needs of plants and animals. Some things that you might expect your kindergartners to do are to use whole numbers and also create drawings that represent ideas. The next standard is S1P1, which is light and sound. And light and sound are usually paired together because they're forms of energy. So later on, students will be learning about energy, so they kind of always, and also light and sound both move in waves. So that's not something as far as first graders need to know, but for you to understand why they're paired together, it's because of the energy, that they represent energy, and also in how they move. So A, B, and C are about light, D is about sound, and E is an emergency alert. An emergency alert came actually from the Georgia Performance Standards, but now it's changed to design a signal that can serve as an emergency alert rather than recognize emergency alerts. But again, if we go back, we want to know if we're going to go ahead and give them this challenge, they need to know what an emergency alert is and what kinds of emergencies we have alerts for. So as far as some big ideas, there are different sources of light. And so we can go back to here. Light is required to make objects visible and then also ask questions. So one of the things that's very much a misconception is that if it's dim in a room, that the light is gone. But actually, as long as you can see, anytime you can see, there is some light. If you were to be in a room without any light at all, you would not be able to see anything, no matter how long you sat in that room. A lot of people think if you sit in a room for a long time in the dark that eventually you'll be able to see, but for you to be able to see, light has to be able to enter your eye. And if there's no light being emitted, then there's no light to get into your eye. So that's kind of a big misconception that people have really been working on lately. And there are kind of two ways that you get light. So something can emit light, and that's like usually the sun or a lamp. And then everything else you can see is reflecting light, and that's kind of a big concept. But if it's not giving off its own light, it's reflecting light from somewhere else. So even the fact you can see your hand or the desk, that is reflecting light from somewhere else, either the sun or a light in the room. And so if we look at like these ideas of things that give off light or emit light, it could be like a firefly or fire or lightning and light bulbs in the sun. And everything else is just reflecting light that came from somewhere else. If we look at light, there's again natural and artificial sources, and it's very important to our plants. And of course, our plants are important to our animals, and so light is important just for life in general. Shadows are explored in C, and again, shadows are kind of related into a bigger picture of light when we get into fourth grade. It's just kind of a precursor, but we've kind of studied a little bit in kindergarten already, and we can start to see how these things kind of can add together, which is the sun is a source of light and that the shadow changes depending on where that source of light is. But in this grade, you can also just look at like things like shadow puppets, and you want to see that the shadow, it comes from the light being blocked. So the light's not going through, that's going to create a shadow. And if you go ahead and you have things that partially block, you might see things that have like a blue tint, and you can go ahead and see the light go through that, or the fact that light can go through glass and kind of you can see through the glass. So light can go through things, it can bend, it can be blocked. So basically just that concept of shadows resulting from light being blocked. If we go from sound, the really big thing about sound is that you need something. If you can hear something, it means that something's vibrating, and it also means that it's vibrating through something else. And that vibration could be through air, it could be through water, it could be through wood, it could be through like solid, liquid, or gas. You don't have to use those words, but the idea that sound requires vibrations of an object. So anything you can see, even if it's really small, or the vibrations are really small, and if you're not seeing the vibrations, if you can hear them, that means that there's a vibration going on. One of the things about sound are some words that people tend to get a little bit mixed up. which is louder and softer. Again, that word soft is coming up with multiple meanings, but we tend to use that. We're using the words louder and softer. We're talking about volume. And if we talk about higher and lower, like low and high, that's not volume, that's called pitch. Now, you don't have to use that word pitch, but volume is how loud or soft something is, and then the other thing is how low or high it is. So that's in a pitch. And then the idea that sound and light move from one place to the other is just the idea. Remember I told you there are similarities. And then that light moves faster than sound. So even though they're similar, they're different. So these are some things about sound and light that maybe you haven't thought about, maybe you have. If you have any questions, of course, this is time you can ask me anytime, like, what does this mean? Or what do you mean when they say they move differently or that they move in waves? I can talk to you about those at the kind of teacher level, or the adult level, and this will give you background knowledge, but also just help you stay focused on kind of the correct things and also understand why they're together. So this one's a little bit off the page, but it's about magnets. And magnets is pretty basic. Now, magnets has been pulled out of 3rd grade, so it's now in 1st grade and 5th grade. And so it's really kind of some ideas that maybe you might have waited for 3rd grade are now going to be in 1st grade. But basically this idea that magnets are around you and you use them for common everyday things, and also that magnets attract and repel each other. They don't repel other things, but they'll repel each other. And also magnets are attracted to common objects. So again, here are some big ideas that magnets can attract or repel and push or pull other magnets. They're only attracted to some objects. They attract through objects. One of the things that's a big misconception is that magnetism can be blocked. Magnetism is not blocked. When you put something between an object between the magnet and what you're attracting, let's say you have a paper clip and a magnet and you put like a piece of wood between them, it isn't that the fact that the wood is not blocking the magnetism. What the wood is doing is creating a greater distance between the magnet and the paper clip. So magnets can be very weak and very strong, and if it's a very strong magnet, it will attract over a greater distance than a very weak magnet. And you can just do this little experiment yourself by just taking a magnet and putting some things near it and then seeing how far away it is before the magnet can't work anymore. So when we do that experiment of putting stuff between it, we're really kind of trying to show that magnets go through things, not that they're blocked. Now for 6 and 7, it's up to you whether or not you want to talk about north poles and south poles, but you want to go ahead and just get the idea that when magnets are put in certain ways, that they repel. And you don't need to know if it's north-north and south-south. What you need to know is that sometimes when the magnets are facing each other, they push away, and sometimes when they're facing each other, they come together, so attract or repel. And that these magnets are different on each side. And the last one is that magnets are used around us. So this idea of phenomenon, like we look around and we say, where are the magnets in everyday life? Why do we have them there? Why are they better than other things to use? How strong does it have to be? Like, let's say I want to put a magnet on the fridge and I put 3 pieces of paper on it and it falls down. Well, what can I do to fix that? Or why did it fall down? I did want to say in the old 3rd grade, we used to talk about iron, nickel, and cobalt. Nickel and cobalt are also metals, but in 1st grade that's not appropriate. So they're really focusing on iron. It doesn't mean that we want to emphasize that iron is not the only thing that magnets work on, but magnets don't work on everything. So you can go ahead and, just so you know this, a paper clip contains steel and steel has iron in it. Those are the most common things you're going to find are iron. Aluminum, but not all metals work, and aluminum is a great example. Aluminum can or aluminum foil is something that looks a lot like a paper clip, but it will not be attracted to a magnet.